President.
Senator from Texas.
Mr. President, I'd like to make two final comments in response to this exchange. The first is that my friend from New Jersey admitted that Senate Democrats introduced nothing, zero, nada, to do anything to fix this humanitarian crisis. Indeed, that the majority leader dismissed the Senate and sent the senators home for the month of August, perfectly content to let the crisis continue, to let tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of children be victimized. He suggested instead the solution was presidential action, unilateral action. You know, there was a time when the Senate believed we had a responsibility to do something, to actually pass laws to address challenges. And yet, under the Senate Democrats, we have a do-nothing Senate. That's why over 350 bills passed by the House of Representatives are sitting on Harry Reid's desk. Because this body no longer votes on meaningful legislation to address the challenges facing this country. I would note additionally that my friend from New Jersey suggested that the reason the legislation the House of Representatives passed prohibiting the president from illegally granting amnesty, the reason it's not going to come up for a vote is because he said it's a bad idea. Well, I recognize the senator from New Jersey may well think that. Indeed, the senator from Illinois may well think that. But no one who's paying attention to the Senate thinks that's the reason it's not coming up for a vote. If it were objectively a bad idea, and the Democrats agreed on that, bringing it up for a vote would be very simple. You'd bring it up for a vote. The Democrats have 55 Democrats in this body. They could all vote it down. It would be defeated. If the point were on the merits, it's a bad idea, bringing it up for a vote would be very straightforward. The reason the majority leader is fighting so hard to prevent a vote on this is that a great many of the members in his caucus are doing everything in their power to convince their constituents back home they don't support amnesty. You know, as you travel the country, the most frequent thing you hear all throughout the country is that the men and women in Washington, they aren't listening to us. Something happens. I don't know if it's the water or what it is, but they get to Washington, they stop listening to us, and they don't tell us the truth. They're lying to us. And you hear this from Republicans, from Democrats, independents, libertarians, all across this country. There is a reason why the popularity of Congress rivals that of Ebola. Because the American people recognize the people in this body aren't telling them the truth. There is one reason and one reason only that Majority Leader Reid does not want to vote on this legislation. Because he wants to allow senators in red states, the senator from Arkansas, the senator from Louisiana, the senator from North Carolina, the senator from Alaska, even the senator from Colorado, even the senator from New Mexico. He wants to allow them to tell their constituents, no, I don't support amnesty. And the reality is, of the 55 members of this Senate who are Democrats, who caucus with the Democratic Party, today has been conclusively demonstrated that all 55 support President Obama's illegal amnesty and are responsible for his promised amnesty of 5 to 6 million after the election. If that were not the case, you would have seen one Democrat show up and speak out to the contrary. Not a single Democrat showed up. And there's a reason we don't have a vote, because if we had a vote, it would force members of this body to be on record. The senator from New Jersey is entitled to make the case on the merits why he thinks amnesty for 5 million or 6 million or 12 million is a good idea. He's entitled to make that case, and if his constituents agree with him, he'll keep getting reelected. But far too many Senate Democrats want to pretend they disagree, and a vote makes that impossible, because if we had a vote, you would see all 55 Senate Democrats vote in favor of amnesty. They're right now hiding behind their leadership because they don't want that vote. They don't want their constituents to understand they support amnesty. So instead, they shut this body down. I have to say, the American people are frustrated. They are disgusted with a Senate that won't do its job, that won't allow votes, that won't consider legislation to address the problems in this country, and that consistently lies to the voters. I'll tell you, on my side of the aisle, I'm happy to have as many votes as we like. You know, it is interesting. The Senate Majority Leader today seems to view as his principal obligation protecting his members from hard votes. And I'd like to point out the concept of a hard vote only makes sense if there's a disconnect between what a senator says at home and what he or she does in Washington. Votes are hard if you have Democratic senators who go home to their states and tell their constituents, I'm really conservative. I don't agree with that crazy stuff President Obama's doing. And then they come here and vote lockstep with the majority leader and the president. Then votes are hard. I'll tell you from my perspective, I don't consider votes hard. In 2 years, what I've tried to do in the Senate is very simple. Two things. Do what I said I would do and tell the truth. The 26 million Texans who I represent, I believe, understood the principles that I'm defending when they elected me. And whether we have one vote or 10 or 100 or 1,000, it doesn't surprise the men and women back home, because what I say in Texas is exactly the same as what I say on the floor of the Senate. It's the way I've tried to vote since I arrived here. The reason the majority leader has 350-plus bills sitting on his desk is because a substantial number of Senate Democrats tell their constituents one thing and vote a different way. This is all predicated on deception. And so I'm glad for this exchange, because this exchange has shined light and made clear to the voters, number one, that amnesty is coming, that President Obama intends to grant amnesty to 5 to 6 million Americans right after the election. And number two, that all 55 Senate Democrats bear direct responsibility for President Obama's illegal amnesty, because all 55 Senate Democrats are standing in lockstep preventing legislation that would stop that amnesty. That clarity is good. It allows accountability. It allows decision-making to be made by we, the people. And the one thing I would encourage of my Democratic friends is, given that reality, go home and be honest with your constituents. All 55 of you go home and say, yes, I stand with President Obama, I stand with Majority Leader Harry Reid in support of amnesty. Those are not the views of the American people, but they are the views of every Democratic senator in this body. And we have a natural check when elected officials ignore the views and values of the people for whom we work, of the place where sovereignty resides in our system, we the people. Mr. President, I yield the floor. I would note the absence of a quorum.